Hello, everyone. I'm Corey, and we're talking Manpower. Today, I've got a very special guest with me. I've got Mr. Bill Kapaku. He's the Senior CPI Specialist at the Assistant Chief of Staff for Installation Management, Headquarters, Department of the Army here at the Pentagon. Mr. Kapaku, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Corey.
So explain to me a little bit about your role at ACSIM.
Well, within the Office of the ACSIM, I'm the lead senior specialist for CPI, which stands for Continuous Performance Improvement. I'm tasked with monitoring the organization's overall strategies, its performance, and then the results, and where there are need to improve, work with the senior leaders on identifying some of the root causes for the problems, and then work with them in terms of identifying possible solutions, and then, of course, executing those plans and improving the overall results of the organization. I'm also a Army certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. So part of my duties in that regard is to provide technical expertise on using quantitative and qualitative analysis on a myriad of areas within the OACSIM.
Well, Master Black Belt sounds pretty intense, and I hope you don't kung fu me during the interview. So explain to me what Master Black Belt, what Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt means and why it's important.
Okay, within the Army's Business Transformation Program, there are a number of CPI tools comprised of programs such as value engineering used by the Corps of Engineers, business process reengineering used primarily by the G6 CIO folks, cost-benefit analysis, Army audits, and in our particular case here, the Lean Six Sigma program. Within the Lean Six Sigma hierarchy, there are 3 levels of belt experts. These include the green, black, and master black belts. Of course, when the program was first started off, very close to deployment within Japan. So there's that link into the martial arts using these belts, and primarily you can immediately understand that there are different levels. So at the green belt level, we're talking about part-timers. So this isn't their full-time job. We ask them to identify what's maybe impeding the process, go in and take a look at stopping the bleeding, focus in on eliminating waste. This could be overproduction, overprocessing, inventory, a whole list of things that we want them to get in there and take a look at. We ask them to go out and map processes. Does the process work as intended and as designed, or has change occurred over a period of time, which happens quite often when people change jobs? We ask them to go in and look for the bottlenecks. Where are the bottlenecks occurring? And then streamlining the entire workflow so that we can get the results that we're looking for. They are provided some quantitative statistical tools in training, and we really rely on our green belts a lot within the Army. The next level is the black belts. And at the black belts, we're talking about projects that are a little bit more complex. We're talking about the kinds of issues that cross functional proponency lines within the organization. And you need somebody that is fairly matured and able to talk to many different chiefs within the organization. And what we do at the black belt level is identify and reduce variation. So we really teach the black belts a lot of statistical analysis tools so that they can then compare processes before, processes after, and then ultimately help us to change the culture. The last group I mentioned is the Master Black Belts. And at the Master Black Belt level, we're talking about folks that have been taught a lot of statistical analysis. And what we ask them to do is to help lead enterprise level projects. And enterprise level projects are the kinds of process that cross commands. They also could be sister services, and in some cases can also include federal agencies, so DoD and other agencies such as the VA.
So why is Lean Six Sigma important to the Army?
Lean Six Sigma is a proven business system used by industry leaders to answer 3 very important questions. First question leaders ask themselves are we doing the right things? Are we in fact focused on the folks who use our particular goods and services? Are we focused on the outcome and the results? and are we in fact meeting those requirements? The second question they ask is, are we doing things right? And doing things right is an internal focus question. So what we're looking at is, we understand what the customers want. Are we able to produce what the customers want at the right cost, the right value, and in terms of the right qualities? And then the final question leaders ask themselves, how do we know? So Lean Six Sigma helps us to set up a methodology using the acronym DMAIC, stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. And by having this methodology in place, it helps us to understand what I just got you describing in terms of the three questions.
So what type of applications would Lean Six Sigma hold for someone who's in the CP26 career field?
As I mentioned, the basis for Lean Six Sigma is process improvement. Our manpower analysts must understand the organization's key work processes in terms of what it produces, for whom it produces, and then what are the associated labor costs involved. As I mentioned when we talked prior, that the manning bin in terms of the Army dollars is the highest right now, I think about $66 billion. So manning is a very important part of what we do in the Army. Our analysts must be able to determine the number of personnel, type skills, proper grades for the various organizational workstations to get the job done. They must be knowledgeable about the current organization and anticipate changes that may be forthcoming due to directive changes from headquarters DA and or their parent organization.
So how can someone start to become Lean Six Sigma qualified?
Well, the journey, believe it or not, begins with the individual. You got to have a person who is desiring to change, or take on the challenge of leading change. At the organizational level, the leaders will screen for skills, abilities, and knowledge. And they also need to take into consideration leadership skills. We have to have people who can get out, who are independent, who also can work well as a team, but who can lead. Very, very important for Lean Six Sigma. The belt candidate given a project, sent to formalize formal Lean Six Sigma training, which may be local or require TDY travel. And according to the Office of Army Business Transformation, we are beginning to change the Lean Six Sigma training program to include 2 weeks of green belt training, and then if anyone desires, an additional 2 weeks for black belts. So altogether, it will be a 4-week course for the black belts. To become Army certified requires passing the course with a minimum score of 70 and completion of a project, which is then certified by the unit's command master black belt.
So I know that Lean Six Sigma people, I know that we've just talked about it, have great analytical skills, are very well read up on statistics, and CP26s are inherently management analysts, and that means that they're essentially analysts. So what makes a good analyst, and how can somebody develop their analytical skills so they're just not at the point of disseminating information to their boss and they can take that next step and actually analyze it?
Check. Well, there are 3 essential skills required to be an analyst. First is curiosity. You got to be able to ask the questions as we mentioned earlier. But more so than that, the second part is the ability to operate independently. And then the third one is they must have strong leadership skills. I mentioned that again. They must be able to work with a team, or they must be able to work very closely with the senior leadership of the organization. And this is really the first time in most cases that analysts are now being thrust up to work closely with leaders, and it may feel uncomfortable. So this is why it's not just analysts staying in their lane, just doing analysis. It's how do we then take that information and communicate it to the organization and to the leadership of the organization.
So we're going to switch gears here a little bit from Lean Six Sigma, because you've said something that's sparked my mind here about leadership. So what is your personal perspective on leadership?
All high-performing organizations place great emphasis on continuously improving their leaders. They try to build teams, and the second thing that happens in some organization is developing the bench. Who are the future leaders that's coming up behind? Good leaders are able to motivate their subordinates, guide the performance through clearly articulated vision, mission, and actions. And one important factor in leadership is leaders lead change, not the underlings. All change in organizations begins first with the leadership and then is deployed into the organization and not the other way around. Sometimes we see organizations that would be going through some sort of training, and the leader will get up and tell everybody how important this particular kind of training is. And then while everybody's inside the training learning, the leader then goes back to his office to get on the telephone. That kind of model needs to change. We need to have leaders stay in the training with the people and undergo training as well.
So what makes them a good leader? What makes a good leader?
Good leaders basically do two things. They accomplish the mission, and they take care of the welfare of the subordinates. They must be confident and competent in understanding the external forces surrounding the organization, as well as the internal forces inside the organizations. They must have good communication skills, both orally and in writing, and they must possess empathy and humility to be open to change. They must be able to measure performance, to establish accountability, and they must build trust and communication in order to overcome fear. So this is what makes a good leader. Those people that can do those things will be very successful as leaders.
And how can you develop these leadership skills to become a better leader?
Well, luckily for us, the Army has instituted formalized training, civilian training, that's very similar to the kinds of training that our senior NCOs and our officers go through. So as DA civilians, we have a career path that allows us to get formalized training. In addition to that, we can take our people and put them into short-term detail assignments. So you can learn more about the organization by serving in various parts of the organization, very similar to what we do with interns. And then, of course, there's a lot of self-learning that occurs that you have to be able to look in some of what what's available on the internet. For instance, YouTube, TED Talks, Khan Academy. These are ways in which we can learn faster because we learn what the rest of the world is learning. So we're not just we're not restricting our learning only to what we can get to in terms of Army programs. We constantly have to stay abreast of what's going on in the world over the internet.
Well, Mr. Kapaku, that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know you're very, very busy, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, everyone, that's all we have time for today, and we look forward to our next segment. In the meantime, feel free to like CP26 on Facebook and follow us on Divots. And until next time, have a great Army Day.